The Umpire Inspire podcast is all about the stories, all about the journeys, and all about the heart of being an umpire. I'm your host, Jason Becker. Hi everybody, Jason here. Thank you, as always, for popping in to check out the show. I have a conversation for you today that I think you're really going to like. You know, recording and producing these podcast episodes for you, it's a double-edged sword. I get to have a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's a big challenge because visiting with these great umpires, these great inspiring individuals, it gets me so geeked up to go work games, to get back on the field, to get back to all the things that we all love to do, right? Working with a newer umpire, witnessing a great ball game, or just shooting the breeze in the parking lot with a partner after the game. And of course, all of those things are not doable just yet. I bet you feel the same, that when we do finally get the green light to safely resume baseball and softball, whenever that may be, there will be some off-the-charts excitement and eagerness, not only for the players, but also we umpires who love what we do. And hopefully that manifests itself in a renewed commitment, a renewed passion to do the very best job we can, no matter what level we serve. All right, so before I introduce you to today's guest, I would just like to make one request of you, if I may. I'd like your input on something. Over on the Umpire Inspire Facebook page, I have a poll running that I would really like your feedback on. Simply put, I would like to know which level of umpire you are most enjoying hearing on the show and which you'd like to hear more of. I have several episodes in process for you these next few weeks with some pretty special guests that I know you're going to really enjoy. But I'm also always looking ahead to what comes next. And so I'd like your help. Head on over to Facebook if you wouldn't mind and give me your feedback. Jon Coney is a Little League and high school softball umpire in Portland, Oregon, umpire-in-chief of his local Little League, and unapologetic umpire nerd. But boy, is he good at what he does on a softball field. And more importantly, Jon has such a clear-eyed view of why he volunteers as a Little League umpire, what it all means to him, and the opportunities that Little League umpires have to make an impact on the experience for the players, coaches, and families. Jon and I met when we were fortunate to be selected to serve as volunteer umpires at a regional Little League tournament last summer. And over the course of that week, as so often happens, we became fast friends and umpire brothers for life. I promise you are going to walk away from this episode with a renewed passion and spirit of service. So please enjoy my conversation with Jon Coney. Jon, welcome to the Umpire Inspire podcast.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be with you.
Jon, you and I are separated by about 3.5, 4 hours on I-5. You're an umpire down in the Portland area.
Right.
And you and I met and had the pleasure of working together down in Tucson, Arizona at a Little League tournament last summer. I'm sure we'll get into that and perhaps share some tall tales.
Yes, Tucson brothers for life.
That's right. That was a fun trip. Definitely a fun trip. So, Jon, to start out with, tell me how in the world you got involved in this crazy thing. Back in the day, when did you start thinking that umpiring youth baseball and softball was going to be a fun and cool thing to do? And tell me about the first part of your umpiring career.
Sure. Well, I think there was, deep inside me, there's always been an umpire, and I never really recognized it, nor did I have any explicit plans or ambitions to do it. But like a lot of us, it happened when my kids started playing softball. My daughter was in 2014. She's 9 years old, her first year playing minors Little League here in Portland, Oregon. And her coach, Brad Perry, who I will mention by name, grabbed the gear and said, "You're working the plate tonight," and because that's what it's like here in Portland, Oregon. I'm much like a lot of areas. I'm a lot of communities, I'm sure, where you got to grab a dad from the stands, and so they put the gear in my hands. I was terrified. These are 9 and 10-year-old girls, and I am 6'2", 220 plus pounds. I'm not a small person, but I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I got behind the plate and I made my first strike call. Now, mechanically, I was a mess, and all I had to do was work what I'd seen the guys on TV do, and so I tried to do this kind of quasi MLB mechanic, and gave a big, deep guttural growl, and it was completely wrong by all Little League standards. But I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Nice.
I kind of like this. And it just like a flash of lightning, it hit me. And so that was in 2014. I think I worked 3 of my daughter's team's games. And then even then I didn't really have, I was like, oh, that was kind of fun, but I just didn't, kind of know what was ahead of me or anything. And I did that season. I did meet. We had a real umpire come in, one of our local guys, Larry Emard, who's been at it forever, and he did about a 20-minute a little mini clinic with me on some things where he worked the plate and I worked the bases, and that really helped kind of lay a foundation. So that's where it got started, and then from then there was a year later then that Brad Perry and a couple other folks who'd been involved here locally with the incumbent baseball little leagues, of which softball was just a slice of that, to say, hey, we want to create our own softball specific only little league for the girls. And would you like to be involved on the board and maybe be our umpire in chief or UIC? And I just said, sure, I can do that. So that's where then it became more formalized in 2015.
Am I calculating this correctly, that you had 3 games under your belt and then were asked to become umpire in chief?
That is right.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's the nature of this beast in Little League and everything. And one of the things I've noticed, you just got to jump into the shark tank sometimes. And that's how it was. So even without planning or great experience, I just kind of jumped in and it went from there.
Good for you. And thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. Because what you've just described makes me curious about another aspect of your umpiring game, and that's how your job experience has affected your experience as an umpire. Now, you come from a media relations type communications background in the public sphere. Am I describing that mostly correctly?
Yes, yeah. I've got a long career, 25 plus years here in government affairs. I've been a public information officer, mostly in the public sector. I'd worked in politics. Formally, I worked in the Oregon governor's office back in the 1990s. I've worked at a major utility and in local government, school district work. So yeah, so being a public affairs professional has, I think, had a big influence on my umpiring.
Yeah, you're stealing my thunder. That was the question, because I think that has to have had a profound impact on your management of games and the way you address coaches and the way that everything goes for you on the field. Can you think of some specific ways that those communication skills have helped you over these past few years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it cuts both ways. It absolutely cuts both ways too. I think my umpiring has taught me a lot about improved my professional world as well. But yeah, I've worked in government affairs and media relations and kind of external relations here. That's all about being a good diplomat. And diplomacy is such an important thing to have. And I think especially here in the Pacific Northwest, where we are not, we don't kind of practice that confrontation heavy smash mouth kind of politics that you see in national news coverage and that kind of thing. But being an element of diplomacy in umpiring and being sometimes persuasive, being firm, being looking the part, being well dressed and addressing coaches and parents and spectators and the players with a certain amount of respect and good humor and striking that right tone when I walk on the field. those are the things. Those are the things. A lot of the nuances I've had to learn and I think be pretty good at in my professional life. And that really has a big, I think, a positive influence on my umpiring. And if there's one thing I can say that I think I do well, which is I know how to kind of read an audience when I come on a game. Is there tension in the air? Am I going to have to calibrate my umpiring one way or another to kind of fit with what's going on with these two teams? How experienced are these teams? How experienced are the coaches? Do they know the rules well? Are they the kind of coaches that are going to be quick to argue with me and that kind of thing? So that all kind of comes into play into how I fine tune my comportment when I'm on the field.
What about a newer umpire? When I teach clinics or when I help younger umpires, the mechanics on the field are one thing, the rules of the game are one thing, but it's quite clearly the game management side that is difficult, if not impossible to teach. So you just kind of have to do it. And that's when we talk about those types of skills and those types of scenarios, that's kind of when I find young umpires' eyes starting to glaze over like, oh boy.
Right. Yeah. To new umpires, I would say, God, what don't you say to them? There's so much material there. Yeah. And so much advice. And these guys are, and I've been in this 6 years now and I'm still drinking from a fire hose. But the things I would share with the guys, with new umpires is look the part. Wear a crisp, nice looking jersey. If you've got the opportunity, obviously, if you get pulled out of the stands, it's kind of a non-issue. But if you look the part, that really kind of sets the tone. That tells these coaches and the players and the spectators, hey, this umpire's taking this seriously. He's shown respect for us, for me. He looks good in his uniform. That really makes a difference. So if you look the part, you're going to have a leg up in an advantage going into this game. You're going to do yourself a lot of favors. And also that, it's being loud, being assertive, being loud. And that I think can also kind of set a tone. Hey, it's not that you're being a jerk or something like that, but you're confident, and everyone can hear you. You don't have to repeat things. So that's really really important. And then finally, we've all heard this so many times, but slow it down.
Yes.
You're not there to make that. And I know that impulse is to make that quick bang, bang play as soon as it happens, because that's what we see on TV. But no, that's, the one thing you're going to serve yourself so well in doing is to slow it down. I have saved myself from so many embarrassments by not making that quick punch out outplay at first base. When I see it happen, like, okay, she's out. I'm just about to go into it, and then next thing you know, the ball's on the ground.
Yes.
So that saves you from a lot of things. So that's slowing it down. Looking the part, being loud. That's really gonna I think that's gonna open a lot of doors for a lot of new umpires.
I think any of the dear listeners of this podcast have heard 4 or 5 guests already say, hey, look the part.
Yeah.
I hope you're hearing that, new umpires, because it's true. It's not just something that we say. It's not a bullet point that goes on our clinic teaching notes.
Yeah.
It is a real thing. And I think you'll agree, John, that there's a psychological component to that, not for all the fans and the players and the coaches, but for yourself. When you walk out after just having a good sharp haircut or whatever does it for you, you walk out of there feeling pretty good. And I think the same applies for when you're ready to go, you're treating it seriously, you are looking the part as best you can. I think you walk onto that field in a different place than otherwise.
Absolutely. That's something I carried over from my professional life where, call me old fashioned, but I do not appear in public in anything but a coat and tie and sport coat and sport coat, tie and slacks and well polished shoes. That's just something my old man handed down to me. And it puts me in the mood when I'm going to go out and do a public testimony like I just did this last week to an elected body here in Portland. So Yeah, look in that part. It'll put you in a better frame of mind. You'll feel better about yourself, and it'll project a lot of respect too.
I have a good umpire friend up here who says that she'll spend any amount of money on new umpire gear in order to look right and to look good. And, her actual wardrobe gets the short end of the stick as far as clothing budget. And I'm exactly the same way. Like my umpire gear, man, I am ready to roll, but everything else is, I don't know, not looking too good.
Right.
That's funny. And it's so true. So after that first year where you just jumped onto the field a few times, the new softball specific Little League started down in your neighborhood, and you were asked to be a part of making that happen, and you said yes.
Yeah. So got approached by April Rice, who's our league president. She's been very involved in softball with her daughter here at the local Little League. So we named it Beaumont Softball. Beaumont is the most centralized neighborhood here in Northeast Portland. And initially, we essentially carved out softball out of the two existing baseball Little Leagues, Wilshire Riverside and Hollywood Rose City. And so that was our catchment area. And so a bunch of us came together, Brad Perry and Ann Korak and April and Gretchen Dunn, a lot of us who were parents who had girls in the league, almost all of us did. And we formed a standalone league. And so we got chartered by Little League International. And so 2015 was our first year. And we'd been in existence ever since. Our numbers, we kind of had a drop off a couple of years ago, but then we got some new board members in and did some more aggressive marketing. So we've got about 140 girls in the league now, and it's everything, the T-ball and farm, and then minors, majors, and we still have a juniors program. And since then, a couple years into it, we wound up absorbing Park Rose, which is out to the east of us. Their softball was really on fumes, so we wound up absorbing them as well. So we've got a very big geographic and population-wise catchment area. But one of the things I've noticed, Jason, is that girls just don't play softball to the same degree that boys play baseball. I mean, our numbers are roughly a tenth of what the baseball leagues are. And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why it is, but the girls just don't, or, soccer and basketball just reign supreme here. Okay. It was like that in Seattle, Washington, where I grew up. So it's a battle we're fighting, but we're working well. We're working well with the high school programs to build continuity there, so to be their de facto farm systems. And it's going very, very well. It's something that we're all very proud of.
So before I ask you more questions about your league, can you back up and make it a little more clear? Why a softball-only Little League?
Yeah.
I'm not quite clear about that.
Well, it's good. So we, what had been happening, and this kind of predates me, but what, again, our league president, April Rice, and some others had noticed is that with softball being just kind of an appendage of the baseball experience here for in the existing Little Leagues, and with relatively, again, few girls participating, it just got overlooked a lot. The girls just didn't have the same amount of attention as the boys were getting. That's not intentional. It was not a slight, I don't think, in any way. It was just really a raw numbers thing with so many boys playing and so few girls playing. So that was where I think the impetus to create a softball-only league was. So the girls had their own place. They had their own identity. They had their own board focused solely on them to improve their experiences. We had their own sponsors they're explicitly sponsoring softball, and so that's been a real boost, I think, to these girls. They have their own name and identity and their own attention, and that's really made it something that the girls are much more attracted to.
And are you still serving on that board as umpire in chief?
Yes, I am still the UIC for that, and even though my daughter's long since gone out of the league, grown out of it, and a lot of us still are. A lot of us original board members are still there because we care so much about it and giving these girls a unique and fun experience. So it's something, and being an umpire in chief, it doesn't other than the actual game time and everything, and some kind of clinics that we run and that kind of thing. It's a pretty easy way to stay involved. And it again, it's a natural thing for me. It's a natural thing for a lot of others too. And so it's a public service that I will continue to do for many years.
And how does your umpire crew so to speak, look? Do you have some volunteers that you can count on to work games alongside you?
Yeah, we do. It is, and I will say this too. It is harder, I think, to get umpires to work softball, particularly at the lower levels, than it is baseball, and that's just that's just a fact of life. But I've got Nick Hudlow, who of course
Oh,
and
sure.
you trained with and worked with. Nick is Nick is half my age, but twice as experienced, and he works a lot of games for me. And there's others too. It takes a while to kind of get to know this network of umpires and everything. And there's there's a deficit out there. Let's be honest. There's a deficit for of sports officials all across the amateur ranks, all across the country. There's a huge deficit there.
Speak to all the other umpires in chief and assigners out there. Are there some specific things that have worked for you to recruit umpires these past few years when you've been trying to fill the stable a little bit?
Well, one of the things I always that I've experienced myself, and I try and share with other umpires here, is because there's such a deficit, and because these are little girls. I mean, you're talking about the minors level of girls who are 9 and 10 years old, in some cases 8, and their level of mastery of the game is not where the boys are at that same age. But one of the things I tell other umpires is people have always been so appreciative and so thankful to have me there working a game, because it's so hard to get umpires there. So I share that with other umpires. I try and get to work our games here. Is that people are really going to be very, even if it's not your best game or anything like that, they're so appreciative that you showed up in person to give these girls an experience, because a well umpired game, no matter what level, things are going to work better. When things work better, the kids have more fun. The fans enjoy it more. The coaches enjoy it more. It is more functional, and it really starts with having a good umpire at that game. When I've seen games that aren't well umpired, because you might have a high school kid who's pulled out of the stands or something like that, and then there's bad calls, and then things start to break down and that kind of thing. So when a good umpire's there, things are more functional, they're more fun, and people really appreciate it. And they'll tell you that. And I've been thanked effusively by parents and spectators, and that makes a big difference.
That makes a huge difference. It keeps our tanks filled. It keeps
Yep.
us coming back. And
Yep.
I really like how you described umpiring as part of the public service that you
It is.
perform. I look at it in a lot of the same ways. And that really helps keep me going when you don't have a great game, or when you have a difficult confrontation, or you're just a little down. No matter what, you're still performing such an important service, and such an appreciated service. And God bless the parents and the coaches who tell you so, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was Jason. I was thinking about it. A common thread between you and the rest of our brothers in Tucson, and we all introduced ourselves. The first day that we were there, and it was a common thread. I mean, that public service angle was common in all of us. One of my umpire mentors and one of my instructors, John Yeager, was saying just this the other night. We were talking informally at one of our classroom clinics, and he said, this is why we answer this calling. Little League and the high school, those two respective sanctions are very, very closely aligned, because they are educational. Educating kids about the game and how to be on a team and how to show character, how to deal with defeat and disappointment. And so working as an umpire in these two respective settings it is very much public service. This is not in the professional ranks, for instance, where guys are players and coaches and umpires alike are there to earn a living. This is very much an educational route.
Perspective with a capital P. That's the
Yeah.
art.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things, in my opinion, that separates the great Little League umpires, is that the perspective never wavers.
No, it doesn't. And you got to, think about Little League. It is community. It's how you build community, how people come together. And you want it to be, yes, it's a competitive game. That's true. But it's also, it's about a lot of enjoyment and education. And so keeping that perspective in mind, I think is really, really important.
So, John, I like to hear about memorable games that guys have worked or been a part of. Can you think of any memorable games that you've had opportunities or any unique experiences over these past few years that stick out in your head?
Yeah, a couple of them just last season, and we touched on this earlier about what's unique about Little League is that it's all volunteer and it's all interchangeable. And so a year ago, I remember I got to my family and I were down in Palm Springs for spring break, and I'd done the week-long clinic in San Bernardino. I'd just done the 3-day clinic here in Vancouver. Our games hadn't started yet because we're still underwater here and in late March. We don't start
Right.
our Little League until after April 1. Even then, we're still underwater. But so I brought my gear with me. It's like, hey, honey, I'm gonna work a game down there, and she rolled her eyes. But anyway, I was able to get on a game in Desert Hot Springs, which is about 10 miles north of Palm Springs itself. And again, they were so appreciative to have someone there who's a real umpire because they were hurting for umpires. I think it was kind of a slightly economic distressed area as well. And but to have a guy come in from Portland, Oregon to work a game, I mean, it just meant the world to them. And it was really fun. So it was my first game of the year. It was a intermediate 50-70 baseball game.
Okay.
And things went well, and it was a memorable game for about the first 2 innings. And then the wheels come off.
Oh, no.
And all kinds of crazy stuff happens. And, obstruction plays and a balk. And see, I'm mostly on the softball side. So the balk thing was, that caught me off guard, how to award bases. And then I had a thrown ball that hit a base coach and went out of play. And how do I, base runners and how do I award bases? And just a complete mess. But
were you working solo on that game?
I did have a base umpire, but
Okay.
he was not experienced. He was,
Okay.
I think he was, his mom ran the league kind of a thing.
Okay.
But they were so afterwards like, God, thank you so much. You came all this way just to help us out. But that's what's really cool about Little League is that interchange. You can go anywhere, get a hold of someone, and they'll throw you on a game, and you're part of the family.
That's so great. So, John, you mentioned Tucson. You said the T word, and I just can't resist. I just can't resist asking you about it just for a little bit. You and I worked the West Region Juniors Softball Tournament in Tucson last summer, and just had a blast. What are some of your main takeaways when you think of our week down there, working for those young ladies? What do you think of? What was great, and how does that change how you think about going forward with your Little League umpiring career?
Right. Well, it was, I just remember thinking, I need to bring my A game. I mean, these teams have traveled from Alaska, Washington. I mean, they've come a long ways. They've invested a lot of money and time in it. So for me, it was important to really to not let up and not, take my foot off the gas in what I was doing. And that was, so I really, I think we all did. We really gave it our all for them. Those players and those coaches were also very top notch. I mean, I would almost say this is basically, if not high school varsity, just sub, high school varsity quality softball. They knew what they were doing. They made our jobs easier too. So we saw, I think, showing that respect for them and that effort that we put in our pre-games, our pre-game meetings, our how we comported ourselves in the field and everything. That was really kind of my takeaway. This was really, really important. And let's be honest, there was a lot on the line for them. You win that tournament, you go to Kirkland, Washington for the Juniors World Series, and so they definitely wanted to win. There was a good atmosphere there. There was a lot of cheering and a lot of laughter and everything, but there was a undercurrent of real competition too.
I totally agree. And the tournament organizers and all the volunteer staff were top notch. I'm sure you'll agree with that. I think for me, when I think back, the first thing that I think of about our trip is our team, the third team. Yeah. And just how fun it was to go through a week plus as a team, and the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows and where you start during that week and where you finish. I mean, for us, it was a marked difference, I would say. We learned so much, each one of us, and the experience of going through that was, I mean, there's so much more to discuss about that, but that's the one thing that I think about.
Right. And, you think about it, for you and I and our other guys here from the Northwest, You're battling the elements too. We're not accustomed to working in the desert in the summer,
that's right.
in that heat, and that added a whole nother layer of preparation and game management and that kind of thing that you have to be ready for. And that was a real a learning experience as well. And that kind of kept me on edge a little bit while we were working that tournament.
So, Jon, describe yourself 3 years from now. It's 2023. You've got a few more years of umpiring under your belt. What have you accomplished, and what are you doing? What are your goals? Where would you like to be?
Well, probably, in terms of where I'd like to be, I'm, right here in Portland, Oregon. I would like to, continuing with Little League. I really want to use, my role as an umpire to get more girls involved in softball at a younger age and have them progress on through high school, and being what I hope is a fun and positive influence on their experience. That's going to be rewarding to me. And again in high school too. And as I said, this will be my second year working in the high school ranks. And I hear this a lot from a lot of parents that I know whose daughters are still playing in high school, is they oftentimes complain about how bad the umpiring is, and therefore their girls aren't getting a great experience in high school. So I want to help be part of that as well. In terms of looking at myself and everything, the only thing I tell myself is being out there is to relax more. I come off as too robotic sometimes.
I prefer by the book, but
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Well, Jon, it's been awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I hope that you and I can get on a field again sometime soon. And I know that from time to time you're up here. I hope you will give me a call. I expect, Jon, that you will give me a call. I will be extremely displeased if you don't. And I'll do the same for you. And
Absolutely.
We can get out there and have some fun.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope this project of yours can not only keep umpires engaged, but also maybe reach out to some new ones. It is a lot of fun. And I can't tell you how many people, when I tell people I'm a Little League umpire, they're like, oh my God, how can you do that? It seems so hard and so awful. And I said, no, it's really, it's not only is it not that bad, it can actually be a lot of fun, and very enjoyable. So it's a great way, again, especially I think on the Little League side, to build community, and to bring people together and educate as well. And there's a lot of positivity there.
And you might find, like you mentioned earlier, that it becomes a calling.
It definitely is a calling. It's fun. I was telling you as we were talking offline ahead of time, I was just modeling for my wife and daughter all my new jerseys, the pink, the cream, the MLB blue, the numbers on the side. And so as we're all kind of cooped up inside here with the coronavirus, they had to be subject to me and my male modeling techniques. So I had the new jerseys on with the drop step and took the mask off and did the whole works. So.
With a mighty roll of the eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Jon. Well, thanks again. Have a great season. I'm looking forward to running into you soon, buddy.
Yeah, we will work a game together soon.
Thanks, Jon.
All right.
Well, there you have it. Jon really strikes the right balance, doesn't he? He strikes the right tone for a volunteer umpire in Little League. I hope you enjoyed hearing his perspective, and I hope you might allow that phrase, public service, to bounce around in your head. Let it ring in your ears a little after listening to this conversation. I'd argue that even if you're at a level where you're getting paid to umpire games, you're still performing a service, either to your community or to the larger community of ball players or just to the game itself. Without us, it's only a scrimmage, right? So we are an essential part of the game. And so when things resume, let's go out there and hold on tight to that perspective. Let's give our very best on the field. And we will not only be enabling the experience, we will be enhancing it. Take very good care of yourselves and those around you this week, and I will see you next week on the Umpire Inspire podcast.